1 year ago, the Orioles had a problem. Their ownership. It was their biggest problem. After winning 101 games in the American League East title for the first time in 9 years, the Orioles' future obviously looked good, really good, but also questionable because of their cheap ownership. Well, that soon thankfully changed because of the sale of the team that take place right before the 2024 season, with a similar situation to Steve Cohen buying the Mets happening when David Rubenstein, a Baltimore native and Orioles fan, bought the team and included legend Cal Ripken Jr. in the ownership group. This was a clear positive change in direction and something to make Orioles fans feel a lot better about everything and their chances of keeping the best players on the team rather than cheaping out and eventually trading them. The 2024 season started out like it was going to be even better than 2023 until it wasn't. The Orioles in the first half were arguably the best team in baseball, only to play to a 500 record the rest of the way and go insanely quietly into the night. And a big reason for this was the fall off of the offense, and it showed against the Royals in the Wild Card Series when they scored just one run in 2 games. I mean, just going out in the most anticlimactic way possible. 0 Orioles magic left in the tank, and with about a month and a half away from spring training games starting off 2025, there are what I would argue more questions to be asked with this team than there was a year ago. Really quick, as always, if you're part of the 59% of viewers not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that button if you enjoy the videos, as the Orioles have only lost this offseason. Last year, ironically, like the same day it was announced Rubenstein was buying the team, they traded for Corbin Burns. The Orioles' biggest need after 2023 was a starting pitcher, an ace. Rubenstein isn't even officially in yet, and they get their ace. So again, it really seemed like a Mets situation, even though Rubenstein had nothing to do with the trade, but it was just good timing and a good sign of good things to come, and that the Orioles were about to become their own version of that Mets situation and just go out and get what they need without the fear of spending a lot of money if need be. And the Burns trade was great, and also something that ended up being a big reason as to why the Orioles even made the playoffs. Because as much as the team overall, including the offense, struggled in the second half, one thing remained constant, and that was Corbin Burns. Even with the lowest strikeout stuff of his career, Burns still made every start, racked up almost 200 innings, all with an ERA under 3, winning 15 games. But Corbin Burns isn't there anymore. Like I said, it was a trade that worked out for what it was, being a one-year thing, but it was now time for the Orioles to try and keep him via free agency, which is where I get into why it's a weird situation the Orioles are in right now. They're in a much more questionable spot because, I mean, they're kind of a worse looking team than last year's, but it's also not fully on the Orioles front office or David Rubenstein. Corbin Burns, as most of you know, just signed with the Diamondbacks for 6 years and $210 million. First off, it's not like the Orioles cheaped out. They were right up there with the Blue Jays in terms of what they offered him, which was in fact more, at least on the surface, than what Arizona offered Burns. When you factor in taxes, that changes, but the Orioles definitely made a real effort to keep Burns. They put a lot of money on the table. But I also don't think it's the worst thing that they didn't keep Burns. Burns has been gradually regressing for a few years now, and that's not guaranteed to continue, but you don't necessarily need to put a ton of your eggs in one basket that you're not even sure is sustainable over time. But to play devil's advocate to that, Burns was still their above and beyond best starter last year. It wasn't close, and they no longer have him anymore. And when you look at what the Oriole pitching staff looks like without him, it's concerning. Their next best starting pitcher, talk about not sustainable. It was 34-year-old Albert Suarez making his return to the big leagues after a 7-year hiatus. And shout out to him. He was good. It's a cool little story, but if a 34-year-old putting up 130 innings is your second best bet, that's not a great position to be in when your best bet is now gone. And yeah, remember when I said Burns threw almost 200 innings? The second most innings on the team was Suarez with about 60 less. Same with Dean Kramer, and it only goes down from there with Grayson Rodriguez, Cole Irvin, etc. Now, could one or two of those guys step it up next year? Sure, especially Grayson Rodriguez. I like him. He has a lot of potential to be a top of the rotation guy, but you obviously can't bank on him and others just all of a sudden stepping up. They did trade for Zach Eflin at the deadline, so for the Orioles, he made only 9 starts and threw 55 innings, but overall with the Rays and Orioles combined last year, it was 28 starts and 165 innings. So with him still having a year left on the contract he signed with the Rays a couple years ago, right now for 2025, he's at the top in terms of reliability. Kyle Bradish got Tommy John last year, but isn't expected to return until the middle of the season, so think of him as a future deadline acquisition. Cool. But the point is, the Orioles rotation, one that was already already iffy, is a whole lot more iffy right now, even with some of the potential that it has. But it's not just the pitching that's only lost this offseason. Anthony Santander, the team leader in home runs last year, is a free agent, and for some reason, nobody seems to really be talking about him, at least compared to every other free agent out there who's signed or hasn't yet. Sure, he doesn't provide great defense, but I mean, we're talking about a switch hitter who just smoked 44 home runs with an average of 34 for his 8-year career up until this point. A player with those numbers seemingly not getting much interest feels off. It's making me feel like Shrek in that one scene.
It's quiet. Too quiet.
And whether it really is that quiet of a market for Santander or not, no reports are making it sound like the Orioles are going to bring him back. It seems like the Blue Jays, desperate for anyone, look to be the most likely landing spot, but it's crazy how the Angels just swooped in as the team to sign him. So let me get this straight. Actually, I always have to have Morgan Freeman say it. It's cooler when he does.
Let me get this straight.
The Orioles have lost their best pitcher and most powerful hitter this offseason. I mean, that doesn't seem ideal. Now, again, the Orioles having a quiet offseason isn't necessarily all on the front office and the owner, Rubenstein. I mean, you can't say they didn't try for Burns. Anthony Santander was their most powerful hitter, but it's not like he was their best hitter. And they also got Tyler O'Neill. So he's kind of the replacement to Santander if they indeed don't get him back, which it looks like they won't. But Tyler O'Neill, that's a really good addition to the offense. And with the other free agents out there, I mean, the Orioles were never getting Juan Soto or anything like that. I think what you can look at as the biggest miss with the Orioles, because again, they got Tyler O'Neill. I think he's a really good addition, even though it's kind of just not really going anywhere, because if they lose Santander and then you replace him with O'Neill, you're just kind of in the same position, but they need a power hitter and O'Neill's a power threat. So that's a good move, but I think the biggest miss with the Orioles this offseason is the lack of pitching moves, though. Blake Snell or Max Fried would have been nice. Now you're left with what? Jack Flaherty or Nick Pivetta? I mean, sure, either of those would be nice gets, but both would be clear downgrades from Corbin Burns. Oh, and no need to brag, but my editing skills have gotten really good lately. Look at this awesome, realistic edit I made of Jack Flaherty if he ever played for the Orioles. But yeah, that's how he would look if the Orioles signed him, who's one of the only options left on the pitching market. They are getting Felix Bautista back this year after he missed all of 2024 from elbow surgery, so that'll be a massive add to the bullpen, one that wasn't as strong last year without him. But that still doesn't solve the rotation problem, which is the biggest one. The last time the Orioles were good before this newer core, like back in 2016, 2014, those years, the rotation was actually never that great. It wasn't the strong suit of the team. That was the offense and bullpen. So maybe the Orioles can try and go that route, at least for now, until you have a stronger rotation. It's just not clear where this team really stands right now, because the Orioles haven't really done much of anything this offseason to get better. It seems a little similar to the Mariners, not fully, there are a lot of differences, but it seems similar in the sense that the Orioles have only seemingly regressed since what looked to be the start of a big run in 2023. When they got swept in the first round in 2023 by Texas, it was disappointing, but you could just chalk it up as whatever, because it was a young, inexperienced team. And that 2024 would be different, only for 2024 to end up worse. Instead of getting swept in the division series, they got swept in the wild card round. And now they've only lost players this offseason, and don't really seem to be doing much to get better, especially on the pitching front. Now, is this the end-all be-all? No. Not every offseason needs to be big, but it's definitely not great to see the Orioles do nothing. The Yankees just went to the World Series, and yes, they did lose Soto, but have gained several other players to supplement that. They should still be good. The Red Sox have gotten better. The Rays should be better, and will be a pesky team regardless. So it just leaves the Orioles in a weird spot. I think if you're not going to add much of anyone this offseason, maybe get started with keeping what you already have, like extending Gunnar Henderson and or Adley Rutschman. But either way, the Orioles, a young team many would have expected to be big spenders and move makers, to take advantage of the current core that they have, especially after the sale of the team, haven't done anything this offseason, and as a result, at least with the way things currently look, they've only gotten worse, and it just leaves me, and I assume most Orioles fans, with the question of where exactly this team is headed. Let me know your thoughts, and thank you for watching.